Today I will teach you how you can touch grass, and prove all those haters wrong. Let's get into it. Step 1.
So I think we've all been accused of being terminally online at least once. It's the #1 TikTok/Twitter comment section insult next to touch grass and LARPer. But the sentiment that those insults are getting at, not considering the context they're being used in, do have some genuine sense. There are more than enough people who are entirely capable of helping and just aren't. Not to knock anyone. There are a lot of reasons that are entirely fair to not be on the ground and present. However, there isn't an excuse to not find your place and a way to participate. There's probably a lot more going on in your area than you're aware of if you're not involved. People already doing direct action in the form of mutual aid, fighting against local police corruption, fighting for indigenous land rights, local climate-related issues, and other things. These local fights are some of the most important. More important than a lot of what goes on in big politics and online. Despite this, they're not getting the publicity that they deserve. So I'm going to give you some brief information on getting involved in these local struggles and finding them. And if you're watching this video and know some more ways or info, or if you want to plug a local struggle that you're involved in, please do it. Comment it, Twitter thread it, whatever you have to do. I'll do my best to boost all of that because I want to create a resource and a space of sorts here that people can use to actually get good information and get involved. Like I said earlier, this stuff only works if we all actually do something tangible with it. Theory and practice. This video is a resource for information on getting involved in local struggles. It is not, however, an endorsement of any specific kind of action or event. How your local struggle needs to be fought is up to you and your community, and I didn't see shit. It's been said 1,000 times, 1,000 ways, that there are a number of roles in a movement that a person can play. Everyone has to find their own. But don't mistake that for me encouraging you not to get involved in more than one thing. Realistically speaking, there's usually some overlap between all of these groups, and if there's not, then there should be, which is important for having a strong community and a strong movement. Get involved in everything, but find your specific niche. All of these different initiatives, if they come together, will form a broad movement capable of providing for our communities, fighting for our rights, and maybe even going further than that. And all of these groups will be different. The point is that all of these different mutual aid groups, affinity groups, and orgs have the potential to form a popular front that can be very effective. Before anyone gets on me, I'm on the position that ideological divides between leftists are largely pretty pointless, especially when our options aren't exactly numerous anyway. I think we have to work together on every possible front if we want to see things get better enough to survive. When it comes to the act of feeding, defending, and caring for our communities, we can easily find common ground and work together. The specificities of what kind of anarchist or what kind of communist you are stop mattering when the police start shooting rubber bullets. We all have common enemies in the fascist illegal police violence and surveillance we're exposed to, the poverty and starvation and homelessness we all risk and experience, and our desire to keep ourselves and our people safe from fascists that roam our streets committing police-sanctioned violence against us. All of the ideological divides only really matter and exist online. I have friends who think differently than me doing mutual aid, and I would never look down on or shit on it because they read different books than me. This isn't post-World War I Russia. There's no real reason for sectarianism, and I'm not gonna tell some homeless person not to go to the mutual aid across the street because they're a different kind of communist than me. And let's be honest, the easiest way for feds to do some COINTELPRO shit is to just convince a bunch of harmless 20-somethings that the other's gonna wall them, when in reality, neither of us knows how to use a gun, and we're both getting walled by the FBI anyway. If your foes can't learn your secrets, they will settle for turning you against each other. Undercover agents can spread rumors, throw around accusations to create dissension, mistrust, and resentment inside of or between groups. They may falsify letters or take similar steps to frame activists. The mainstream media can participate in this by reporting that there is an informant in a group when there is not one, or misrepresenting the politics or history of an individual or group in order to alienate potential allies, or emphasizing over and over again that there's a conflict between two branches of a movement until they really do mistrust one another. Again, a shrewd security culture that fosters an appropriately high level of trust and confidence should make such provocations nearly impossible on the personal level. When it comes to relations between proponents of different tactics and organizations of different stripes, remember the importance of solidarity and diversity of tactics, and trust that others do too, even if media accounts suggest otherwise. Don't accept rumors or reports as fact. Go to the source for confirmation every time and be diplomatic about it. Getting shit done matters more than picking the one ideology that's right. If anyone was objectively right, we'd have beat capitalism by now. That's my take on leftist unity. We should all care more about actually helping people and finding our way of doing that than making sure everyone thinks like us or everyone likes us in general. In fact, sometimes when you're organizing, you're going to fucking hate the people you're organizing with. But fucking hating the people you organize with is not always more important than just getting shit done and actually helping people. I don't like half the people in my community, but I'm not gonna not help them. I'm not gonna refuse to organize with them. The petty reasons I might dislike someone mean nothing compared to the scale of fascistic violence that we're facing. The number one thing you'll have to be able to do to get involved in your community in a tangible, radical way is start paying attention to your community. The ability to look around and diagnose the needs that aren't being fulfilled by the state, local struggles that need fighting or need help being fought, what's going on regarding local politics, that sort of stuff. If there are or are not hateful groups in your area committing violence or spreading hateful fascist rhetoric, there's more than likely already grassroots groups and organizations fulfilling all of those needs. Doing research online and on social media can help you find them. But before we really get into that, we have to cover some other basics. Number one, most important, security. Security culture, operational security, OPSEC, and informational security, InfoSec, are incredibly important. Be careful what information you reveal about yourself. As said before, I'm not endorsing any kind of illegal action. I am, however, encouraging common sense security culture. Be careful what actions you talk about. Be especially careful when posting online. In fact, if you have to stop and think, is this safe to post online? It's not safe to post online. So don't. Be careful who you give information to. Infiltrators exist, and they aren't just the really obvious cops that think they're hidden in a crowd at protests, but like long-term people in a movement can turn out to be infiltrators. It happened last year, it happened in the 70s, and it will probably happen to you or someone in your vicinity at some point. So be careful. I have a video on security culture that you can and should watch. I'll link it below. There's also more information on that might be a little better than that video, honestly. Point is, be careful what you say, where you say it, when you say it, who you say it in front of, and all those little things. Be a little paranoid. It's okay. And always remember that turning off your phones and putting them in another room before some conversations is a lifesaver. An affinity group is a group of friends that you go to protests with, do mutual aid with, and organize with. They're typically around 3 to 7 people from my experience. There can be more, and they consist of only people you absolutely trust. It is your job to protect each other on the ground. You never leave a comrade behind. You avoid being separated, and you stay vigilant. This is the easy part. Just talk to your friends and get them in on it. You and your friends already constitute an affinity group, the essential building block of this model. An affinity group is a circle of friends who understand themselves as an autonomous political force. The idea is that people who already know and trust each other should work together to respond immediately, intelligently, and flexibly to emerging situations. Affinity groups should be well connected to a larger community or cluster of other affinity groups and community initiatives. On top of working on their own, these groups can team up for larger, more complex actions. Your affinity group should also be reading and discussing theory and stuff together. And I don't just mean like old dusty white dudes, but more recent stuff that will probably be more helpful. Lately, I've been really enjoying the book Blood in My Eye by George Jackson, but there are books on mutual aid that I highly recommend, and it can be really anything you want. Study previous groups like Black Panthers, Food Not Bombs, and other orgs. You can set up a mutual aid event in 2 days with a small group of friends if you're all dedicated to doing it. 24 hours if you're really dedicated. Trust me, I've seen it happen. There's more information on this topic in the description as well. The COVID-19 pandemic left many people in America jobless and hungry. For months, our government did basically nothing to really help. Meanwhile, random citizens worked together to feed each other, provide sanitary supplies to people who need it, masks, collect and provide information on where people can get more help, and did other forms of mutual aid. It kept us, literally kept me, alive. I would have gone hungry several times during the height of the pandemic if people in my community hadn't taken care of me, as would some of the people watching this video. This same pattern played out during the AIDS crisis, where queer and trans activists worked together to provide resources, information on safe sex, condoms, medication, care, and community support to those suffering from AIDS. While the government and those in the halls of power were still literally laughing at the mention of AIDS. That mutual aid sustained a militant queer liberation movement that succeeded even in the midst of apocalyptic destruction and fascist state repression. During the George Floyd uprising, mutual aid in the form of food and water, and most importantly medical aid, sustained a movement, all of that mutual aid growing out of what had been established during the pandemic. Autonomous networks acted as supply lines for a militant protest movement, providing goggles, masks, gear, armor, art supplies, and more to keep a movement alive. Mutual aid is what let an uprising sustain itself from June to January to become the largest movement in U.S. history. Mutual aid is the easiest, safest, and most important kind of action to do. Mutual aid fuels everything. It's not simply charity. Mutual aid is a horizontal practice of community autonomy, with members of said community working together to provide food, clothing, and shelter in ways that circumvent capitalist relations, build infrastructure and dual power that can fill the gaps the state and capital leave, and use them as leverage to pull apart those oppressive powers. We aren't just providing charity by giving people free stuff, but hoping to build an alternative system within the skeleton of the old, basing our relations on our shared suffering, on our shared needs, on solidarity. To each their need, from each their ability. Creating free stores, barter, trade, and gift economies, sourcing food and commodities locally when possible, and helping maintain connections that can be vital for surviving during natural disasters, protests, uprisings, and other events. The state and its bureaucracy will always lag to help people in need, but Hurricane Katrina, COVID, the AIDS crisis, and many other disasters and struggles proved that the fastest and often best response comes from an active and engaged community working together as equals to survive. You can find local groups if you go on Twitter or Instagram and search something like your area and then mutual aid. Groups like Food Not Bombs may have chapters in your area. Ground Game LA has a website with a map that shows mutual aid groups all over the country, which is linked below. There's more information on this topic in the description. And if you find a group that's in your area, reach out to them and see if you can do anything to help. If you can bring food or bring clothes or anything. I know we all hate politics, especially electoral politics, but they do still affect us, and while they should not ever be mistaken for anything radical, nor is anything less than smaller local appendages of a neoliberal fascist police state chaining us to the economy as a form of neo-serfdom, we should still be aware of what's going on and shaping it where we can. Know your local politicians, judges, DAs, council members, representatives, and senators. Know them by name, and don't be afraid to give them a call when it's needed for campaigns or protests or whatever. Again, don't let this become the extent of your politics. Don't mistake it for sufficient, but be involved. Don't confuse progressive candidates for allies either. Sheriff Villanueva was the progressive vote for LASD, and he's literally, by definition, a fascist. Know who you're fighting intimately and exhaust every method, from mail lists to Molotovs. Figuratively speaking. I just like the alliteration. Don't Molotov anyone, please. I would argue this is the most important thing. All over the country, there are indigenous groups fighting encroaching colonialism, fascism, and ecocide, and they can always use more support. Indigenous people are at the forefront of the climate movement, and the number one way to prepare your community for the effects of climate change and to fight it when possible is giving indigenous people their fucking land back and protecting the land they have. Do research on what tribes are in your area and see if they're calling for support. Local biodiversity needs to be protected. Local water sources need to be protected for the good of not even just indigenous people, but everyone. The Flint water crisis should have taught us that. And that water especially needs to be kept out of the hands of pig water companies that'll steal it and then sell it back to us, so those of us who can't afford it just die. And forests need to be protected. Recently, there have been struggles in so-called Canada over indigenous land rights and oil companies that are intent on plunging the human race off a cliff. The Wet'suwet'en government was recognized in a 1997 ruling by the Supreme Court of Canada, which held that the First Nations had never given up rights or title to their lands, and like other First Nations in Canada's westernmost province, the Wet'suwet'en never signed a treaty with the British Crown nor the Canadian government, meaning their territory is unceded land. They never surrendered or ceded their territory, so what they're dealing with is this incursion by pipeline companies and police who are basically invading. This is just one of many struggles, so do research and get involved. There's more information on this topic in the description. As mentioned earlier, local biodiversity is important to maintaining a strong and healthy environment in the face of climate change. On top of that, growing your own food is also very fun. I used to grow my own tomatoes and peppers and basil and other herbs and stuff before I was no longer able to do that because I moved to a different location. But that's irrelevant. Point is, do good research on your area and find local plants or foods that you want to grow, and then find a spot and get to it. Endangered species of plants are especially ones to take note of. The loss of biodiversity has a devastating effect on the environment that compounds with others as time goes on. Circle of life and stuff. Empty lots and fields, abandoned places, and anywhere you can find space and be sure your growth will be safe is an option. You can even have multiple locations throughout your area. Get a skateboard, get a bike, and ride around your neighborhood and plant everywhere you can. Get enough people into this and you can radically shift the makeup of your community. My comrade St. Andrew has a couple of really great videos on solar punk and on guerrilla gardening and such. There's more information on this topic and on all the other ones I talked about today in the description, and I not only highly recommend, I practically demand that you do more research, look into these resources, find out where you can get involved, and do it. Don't sit here on the computer watching video essays and like leftist streamers and do nothing, because that's not practice. It's in fact the opposite. Like, this might sound a little conspiratorial, but like all of the internet, like the media, the movies, the TV, all of it is an intentional distraction that exists to keep us off the ground. It's all an intentional distraction that exists to keep us off the ground. So at some point, you have to turn off the computer and yes, touch fucking grass. And by touch grass, I mean... No, I can't say that because I'll get in trouble. And by touch grass, I mean get out there and vote. No, but for real, like, do stuff for your community. If there are homeless people in your community, you should be feeding them if you're able to. If there are indigenous people that are near you that are defending their land, you should be directly involved. You should be helping. If there are local struggles against police violence, if there are people who were killed by police in your area who still haven't gotten justice and people are fighting for that, you should be involved. Be involved in everything you can. None of this matters if you don't do something about it. So turn off the computer, put down the phone, and touch grass. I don't mean to sound like my parents or like a teacher or something, but like, shit, y'all. Put the shit down and do something, please. Frankly, we should all be a little sick and tired of carrying around these little rectangular government surveillance devices in our pockets. We all know that they're listening. They're always listening, so like, be careful what you say around your phone. Ugh, God, it's hard for me not to sound paranoid as shit saying shit like this, but it's true. Like, it's true. Watch the video on security culture, because there's some scary shit out there. Like the Pegasus software, they can like turn your phone back on remotely if you turn it off. Like, you be careful, please.